Alrighty then, good evening, good afternoon, good morning, wherever you happen to be. My name's Michael, I'm the Dead Aussie Gamer, and welcome to Dag Reads, where Dag reads. I mean, I feel like it's in the title. You gotta get what's on the box here. How are you guys? I hope you guys are doing well. I'm super excited to continue our reading stream that we have been doing for a while. We missed out last week because I did a marathon game that I had bought, and I realized I was halfway through my reading stream and I hadn't stopped streaming for like 12 hours, so we didn't do one last week. But we're here now, and I'm super keen to get back into it. For those of you who are interested in my video game progress, I still haven't finished it. Midnight Suns, the new Marvel game. I think I only got like I think I'm like partway through Act 2, and you know I mean, how many hours have I put in? I don't even know how many hours I've put in. I have put in so many hours into that game, but, you know, it's fun. It's having fun. So, yeah, today we're just going to be going and continuing our read-through, having a chill-out day, and, yeah, just hanging, talking, sharing love, life in the world. I can see Schooly Eye in chat. Welcome in, welcome in. For those of you who don't know, our friend Schooly Eye will be joining us for the first time on one of my games, on Friday next week, so I'm super excited about that. Hey, there it is, Schooly Eye with the Twitch, baby! Yay! Thank you for your sub, and thank you for, of course, your continued patronage. But yeah, as I was saying, I'm super keen to get to see Schooly Eye's rendition of their new character, and get to see them playing on my adventures, and getting to see all these new characters. It's going to be a lot of fun. It is going to be a, it's going to be great. It's going to be a lot of fun. And for those of you who celebrate, Happy Lunar New Year, or Gong Si Fa Chai. It is the Year of the Rabbit, which... I honestly don't know too much about what's happening in the Year of the Rabbit, but, you know, it is the Year of the Rabbit. I am very, very excited for this new year, though. I feel like, all of the universe itself is preparing me for 2023 to be an amazing year. So, I'm doing all the lucky rabbit things. I'm getting... you know, like all of the, like touching a lucky rabbit and all that other stuff, eating chocolate bunnies on Easter, doing all that sort of stuff, you know. Celebrate all the superstitious stuff. Why? Because if you don't believe in superstition, right, and it's not real, then, you know, like, you know, whatever. But if you don't believe in superstition and it is real, then you're just cutting yourself short, you know? I mean, hey, if I believe in superstition and it's not real, what am I losing out on? Friggin' nothing. Friggin' nothing. I'm just wasting a bit of time. So I'm happy to waste a bit of time on some good luck. He spilled some Coke on my book. No. That's fine. It turned into syrup. And it is actually on a pretty hard cover, so I didn't damage my book. Coke. So much sugar, it doesn't stain. It's weird. Okay. So, we've got a book. Big book. We are reading Rowan and the Zebak. This is the fifth book, I want to say. Fourth book, maybe. And let's see, 1, 2, 3, fourth book. It is the fourth book in the series. Okay, where do we even start? This book is like taking it out of me. So Rowan is, of course, our main character, our protagonist from the village of Rin, a hero over the last few books that has come about from his means to face off with incredibly dangerous events that have threatened his entire village. But each and every step of the way, Rowan has proven himself time and time again. Whether it was in the first book in Rowan of Rin, where the town was devoid of water, and Rowan needed to climb a mountain and try to figure out what was happening, knowing full well that at its top may have rested a dragon, which, spoiler alert, there was a dragon, to him learning about the ancient traveler lore surrounding an ancient forgotten city of giants, which was devoured by giant plant monsters, which incidentally were trying to eat Rin, and Rowan managed to again thwart this from happening. In the previous book, we saw Rowan being chosen as the as the chooser who decided on the leader of the Maris people, the fish people who live upon the coasts, and after trials and tribulations managed to face a giant, deadly, poisonous sea serpent in order to come up with a cure, an antidote to a deathly affliction that was ailing her mother, or his mother. So, yeah, Rowan's been through a lot. And now, just as Rowan's mother and now stepfather were getting married out in the field by the noble Bookshaw, a giant lizard-like creature with giant wings and forked tongues swooped down and grabbed Anad, Rowan's younger sister, and has flown her away. The only hope that Rowan has now is recognizing that this snake creature had a collar on it and likely is a scout for the Xebec and has taken young Anad over the seas and across to out walking, hearing only. No worries. Welcome in, Hester. Yeah. Grabbed hold of Anad, taken him across the sea, likely to the home of the Xebec, and Rowan has decided to go on his own to try and retrieve his sister. With little hope, it is his friends that have now rallied to him in order to try and help him. Zeal, the forerunner of the Travelers, a woman who rides a kite for the Travelers and kind of does all the scouting, who was born of the Xebec but raised by the Travelers. So Zeal is coming along with Perlane of the Maris people, who guided Rowan during the time where he was selected as the chooser. He is a Maris person, an aquatic individual who, I guess, is very traditionalist. I think I kind of get the impression he believes in the ways of the Maris and how they do things. And then, of course, Alun, the baker from his own hometown, a man born not only of Rin but also of the Travelers as well. So the four of these individuals are headed to the land of the Xebec. But of course, they are not going unprepared. They went and spoke to old Sheba, the witch of Rin, to learn for anything that may guide them towards Anad. And a rhyme was given, as they have been in every single other book. The rhyme is as follows. 5 strange fingers form fate's hand. Each plays its part at fate's command. The fiery blaze the answer keeps, and till its time each secret sleeps. When pain is truth and truth is pain, the painted shadows live again. 5 leave, but 5 do not return. Vain hope and pride in terror burn. Now, very, very foreboding, very foreboding. Unlike the others, which seem to sort of spell out a recipe or a means for, for success, this seems to spell out doom. So, yeah, we're gonna have to see what happens there. So let's get stuck in, shall we? If you have any questions about the book, the story, what's happening, or if you just want to talk, because this is actually a good mental health stream too. So if you guys just want to talk, you are welcome to. And between chapters, we'll always take some time, chat with you, hang out, do that whole thing. So yeah. All right. Chapter 7, The Tempest. Actually, before I start, let me just quickly drink some water, because hydration is important. I don't have a hydrate button, but I'm thinking about putting one in, because I always forget to drink. All right. Chapter 7, The Tempest. Perlane had bought 3 vests made of cork. One for Alan, one for Zeal, and one for Rowan. They float in the sea. Sorry. Oh, hey, kick the table. Nice to see you. I got your email, fellow Perthian. I haven't had a chance to respond to it because I've been busy this weekend, but rest assured I have seen you. Welcome in and thank you for the follow. Okay. So, let's try that again. Perlane had bought 3 vests made of cork. One for Alan, one for Zeal, and one for Rowan. They float in the sea. Our people use them when they have been injured, he explains. When they have lost the use of their arms or legs and cannot swim to safety in the rough waters. I have perfect use of my arms and legs, and I can swim, snapped Zeal, looking at the thick, clumsy brown garment in disgust. The Zebak learn to swim before they can walk. How else do you think I survived long enough to be washed up alive on the coast where Ogden found me? Pelaine smiled. Well, then perhaps you can swim. But, he said, not like the Maris. And by the appearance of the waves and the smell of the wind, I fear you may need to swim like a Maris before our journey is over. Alan and Rowan were already trying their vests on gracefully. After a moment's hesitation, Zeal does the same. Pelaine nodded with satisfaction, then turned his attentions to the sail. The wind rose higher, and the sails filled. For many hours the boat seemed to fly atop the waves, speeding as fast and as easily as a traveler kite through the air. They took in turns to rest, though only Pelaine seemed to actually sleep. The others lay awake, turning uncomfortably in the hard cork vests, disturbed instead of lulled by the endless movement of the boat. Dawn came at last, but the cloud veiled the sun, and the sea was grey with swelling waves. Pelaine, Rowan, and Zeal nibbled dry fish and drank water. Alan only took water. His face was greenish-white. Plainly, he felt ill, and as the morning wore on, he became worse and worse. Finally, he could do nothing but lie, groaning at the bottom of the boat, covered in a blanket. Rowan bent over him, his face creased in concern. Rowan. Owen, come closer. I am dying, Rowan, moaned Alan. No, you are not my friend, said Pelaine calmly, looking down from his place at the helm. As I have told you many times, land-bound creatures often suffer this sickness at sea. It is the movement of the boat, they say. He allowed himself a small smile, as he turned away to check on one of the ropes. I cannot understand it, I cannot understand it, Rowan heard him murmur. There is nothing I love better than sailing. As the morning became the afternoon, Alan slowly began to feel better, but by evening he was unable to get up and eat even a little. Never again will I make fun of you for being afraid of flying, he promised Pelaine. If you will swear to never bring me upon the sea again. But by this time, Pelaine was not in the mood for smiling. The bad weather he had felt brewing was almost upon them. The clouds, dark, grey and angry, tumbled and raced across above their heads. The wind was blowing harder. The dark, heaving waters were being whipped into sharp, pointed tips with white foam. At last, the full force of the storm struck them. Rain pelted down, and the boats heaved and tossed in the great waves, and the sails, torn by the winds, seemed to have no end, no mercy. As they plunged on into the black night, the wind howling around them and the waves beating against the frail sides of the boat, Rowan realized that his plan to make this journey alone had been more than foolish. It had been insanity. He could never have kept the boat afloat in this raging sea, nor could Alan have helped him, or Zeal. Whatever her determination and courage, it was Pelaine and only Pelaine who could do it. Pelaine had been born to the sea, and he knew it as none of his companions ever could. Without Pelaine's small webbed hands on the tiller, and his urgent voice telling them which ropes to pull and which way to pull their weight, which sail to raise and lower, they will all have perished within hours. But it was Pelaine, the only one of them, who truly understood the sea's raw power, who was most afraid, and it was he who had warned them, after hours of fighting the storm, that they were in terrible danger. "The mast! The mast will not hold!" he shouted above the roaring wind. "It is straining beyond bearing! We are taking in water, and the gale! The gale is getting stronger! We must prepare!" "Prepare for a swim?" Alan's lean face then tightened. He was wet, though his muscles of his arms strained against the rope. He held back and leant as Zeal backed over the side of the boat, using their weight to keep it upright. "Yes," Perlain shouted, "but do not despair. The sea is shallower here than before. I can feel it. The wind has driven us fast and hard. I believe we are not far from shore, though not where I intended." "Where then?" panted Zeal. Before Perlain could answer, a huge gust of wind and a terrible groaning crack was heard as the mast snapped. With a cry, he leapt clear as the wooden pole tilted and crashed down, crushing the tiller and smashing the side of the boat. Then a great wave swept over the deck where Perlain had stood, and there was then nothing more than the hissing and swirling of water. "Perlain!" Rowan screamed. But even as he shouted, he felt the boat rolling and tipping, the deck sliding out from under his feet, and before he could think or cry out again, he was gasping and struggling in the cold black sea, waves crashing around him, blinded and deafened by the pounding waves. He tossed helplessly. 1 minute overwhelmed by the tide, the next minute forced to surf the surface again by the cork vest, choking and fighting for air. "Alone!" he cried. "Zeal! Perlain!" But he could hear nothing. Nothing but the roaring of the gale and the crashing of the waves, the awful, splintering, smashing sounds of the boat being torn apart. Something reared out of the blackness beside him. "Serpent!" In his terror and confusion, Rowan lashed out, shouting, choking as salt water rushed into his mouth and nose. He struggled blindly, his mind filled with the terrible picture of a slimy, twisted body, dripping jaws, and needle-sharp teeth. Then his hand hit rough hardness, and he realized that the object beside him was not the serpent at all. It was a large piece of wood that had floated up clear of the boat smash. He clutched at it, using the last of his strength to haul himself partly onto it, so that his head and chest rested upon a hard surface. He could no more. He clung to the wood, panting and trembling, tossed and blown about like a piece of wreckage himself. He screwed his eyes shut. "Anad, I'm sorry," he thought, and then he let the waves take him where they would. "Rowan! Rowan!" The voice was calling to him from a long way off. Rowan did not want to answer it. He wanted to stay where he was, lulled by the soft hissing and rippling sounds, dozing in this pleasant half-sleep where nothing was real, where nothing was to be feared. But now a hand was shaking his shoulder, and the voice was louder and louder. He frowned and mumbled and opened his eyes. They stung and watered, and at first he could see nothing but darkness. "Take heart, he is with us," the voice called. There were faint, hoarse cheers from somewhere nearby. Gradually, Rowan's vision cleared, and through the watery dimness he saw a face he knew bending close to him. Perlain. Rowan tried to speak, but his throat felt dry and scratched. He pressed his hand to his neck and swallowed, and tried again. "Perlain," he croaked. I thought you were drowned." Perlain smiled and shook his head. "I am not so easily disposed of, my friend," he said. "But I thought you were drowned for the past hour, and now, like a miracle, the tide has brought you in, draped like a piece of draggled weed over some planks on my poor boat." "Alan," croaked Rowan. "Zeal." "They are both here," Perlain said. "They are resting, feeling sorry for themselves. Much like you, they have swallowed a lot of salt water, and it has not agreed with them." He looked around, a little uneasy. "Do you feel strong enough to move now?" he asked politely. Serpents often choose to hunt close to the shore, especially after a storm, when there may be injured prey floundering in the shallows. Only then did Rowan realize that he was lying in shallow water, and that Perlain was holding his head up and away from the small waves that were bubbling and hissing around him. Painfully he managed to stand. Then, leaning on the Maris man's shoulder, he waded with him to shore. Alan and Zeal were sprawled against a small hillock of sand not far away. Both were pale, wet, and shivering, but both grinned with pleasure when they saw Rowan. "We are a fine party of heroes," Alan joked through chattering teeth. "Half drowned, half frozen, half dead with tired, and sick to our stomachs as though drinking half the bloody ocean. Not to mention all our supplies are feeding the fishes." "Yes, but at least we're alive," said Zeal as Rowan slumped down beside her. "The storm is over, and I still have my flint to start a fire. I have my rope, and my kite too. Pelaine has his knife, and has saved one bag of water, and—" She looked hopefully at the Maris man. "Surely we are somewhere near where we intended to be?" Pelaine returned her gaze, hesitating. The corners of his mouth were tight, and when he spoke, his voice often sounded strained and odd. "Not so near, but we are in the territory of the Xebec, certainly. I think this is a place I have seen from far offshore in the past. If it is, then we are safe for now, but—" His voice trailed away. "But what, Pelaine?" asked Rowan. Pelaine shook his head, then turned away. He started picking up sticks of driftwood from the sand. "It is nothing. And in any case, I cannot tell if I am right until dawn." For a few moments he remained silent, then cleared his throat, and turned back to them smiling. "For now, the most urgent task is to light a fire. You are all very cold and wet, and if you rest like this, you will be ill. I know how weak and tender you warm-blooded creatures are." At that, Zeal and Alan laughed and staggered to their feet to help him. They told Rowan to lie where he was, and indeed, he had little choice. He was still dizzy and sick, and his chest ached every time he drew breath. Zeal started a tiny blaze with dried grass and sparks struck from the flint she had carried, then fed small twigs into the flames. The fire grew brighter, then stronger as each heavier piece of wood were added. The flickering light and the warmth, the pleasant crackling were comforting, and Rowan began to feel more like himself. But as his mind began to clear, grim thoughts began to torment him. The boat was wrecked. None of his companions have spoken on what this meant, but it was all in their mind. Whatever the result of their quest, there was no easy way home for them now. And what of Anad? While they lay here on this strange shore, she was at the mercy of the Xebec. Alone, imprisoned, perhaps injured and in pain. He pushed the thoughts away and sat up. He realized he was still wearing the cork vest. It had certainly saved his life, but it was uncomfortable now. He fumbled at its ties and managed to undo it, and pulled the vest off him. As he did so, he felt Shiva's package beneath his shirt. His heart thudded. He had completely forgotten about it. The storm, the wreck, the boat, his fear of his companions, and his own fight for his own life had driven it from his mind. With trembling fingers, he pulled it from his hiding place. On to Chapter 8. Alright, what a ride, what a tumultuous journey our friend Rowan has taken across the seas and the waves. Kick the Table says, "Fear the wrath of Gosrae, winds and waves." Yep, no, absolutely. If ever were there were a tale for a sailor to tell of the might and fury of Gosrae, then yes, this would be it. No, absolutely. Gosrae, by the way, for those of you who may not know, is the Pathfinder deity of wind and sea and nature. But yeah, no, it's yeah, man, I love the notion of this because I kind of think to myself, like, if I'm playing in oceanic games, obviously we spend a lot of time, like when we play D&D and stuff, to like have our characters get from point A to point B when we're riding on boats. But it's really interesting if you start thinking about the idea of what happens if you are simply washed upon shore. Is that like a good enough like story element? Like, you know, like you get into the middle of a storm, you fail to deal with it, it cracks, it breaks, you fall over the bow, and then you wash up on shore somewhere. Is that, like, lazy? Does it mean that if I asked for, like, a bunch of survival checks for them to sail their boat, that those were pointless because I always managed to wash them up? It's an interesting thought exercise, the idea of a shipwreck in an RPG. Hey, goblins and warlocks, welcome in. How are you, mate? I hope you're doing well. How's life? How's love? How's things? Tell me all the things. Welcome in. We are reading Rowan and the Zebak, part of the series of Rowan of Rin by Emily Rodda. A group of heroes is looking for a kidnapped child, the sister of our main character, who has been taken to a land filled with tribal barbarians who formerly enslaved our heroes' people many, many, many years ago. And along with their friends, a baker named Alan, a woman who rides a kite and scouts for a group of travelers named Zeal, and of course, Perlane, a fishman. Well, I say fishman, he's got like webbed... He's cold-blooded and he has webbed hands. That's really as fishy as he gets. Yeah, that's our little hero group. So yeah. You know, just editing VODs for YouTube. Oh man, editing. You know what? I really need to get onto that. I don't. I just have to know. I have no time. I mean, everyone knows what my schedule's like. I run 10 to 15 games a week. If I had to throw in editing my videos into that mix, I would not sleep. I mean, I already barely sleep, so there you go. Schoolia, or maybe it just affects the number of resources and gears you have when you find on the beach. Oh, that's actually a really good point, Schoolia. I like that. Yeah, so like if you actually do make all your saves and if you do make all the things, you land on the beach, but you have all your supplies and all your equipment and all your stuff. But if you fail, then yeah, that makes sense that yeah, you're just there with no resources. Plus, you then also need to find a way to get off the island that you're on. That's a good point. That's a good point. I always wonder how much gear I can hold onto during a shipwreck. I would say this. Unless your character is carrying their backpack, it is whatever is in their hands or tied to their person. Like, I've actually done shipwrecks before where they've lost their weapons, where some of them haven't even had their armor because they capsized, because they literally got up during the night where their characters were, like, in the middle of a storm. They've awoken, gotten up from their hammock and started doing stuff, then been thrown overboard. And they're like, oh, do I have my armor and stuff? And I'm like, no, you were in your pajamas when you were helping out. Unless you wanted to take the half an hour it took to put your plate mail on, you know, you have no weapons and armor. But that being said, it's always a good prerogative to, like, then give them something to help them out. But, you know, still super interesting. Very interesting thought. Damn, Sea God. Yeah, no, that's my life. That's my schedule. Actually, it's even busier at the moment because January is school holidays. So all my programs that I have, because I obviously run programs in my local youth center, all the programs I run here usually are after school programs. They become day-long programs during the holidays. So I run games anywhere between, I think I calculated it for someone recently, and it was like 6 hours, like minimum 5 hours a day, every day of the week. I'm running games, and the longest day I've got is like a 12-hour day, where I've got like 12 hours worth of games. Yeah, that's just for January, and I don't regret it. I mean, everyone who knows me knows that I'm an endurance gamer, and I am very careful and very meticulous about my sleep schedule. So I'm not. Yeah, there you go. Inspiration. Look, in the same way I think an athlete is inspiring, you know, I agree, but, you know, you don't want to live the life of that athlete, you know what I mean? It's like that. I'd say thank you, you know, like it really means a lot because I do put a lot of effort into what I do, but I would say do not do what I do unless you want to turn it into a profession, you know, like that's my thing. You know, 1 or 2 games is plenty for most people. Yeah. Let's see. Yeah, I'm about to run 4 games on top of the full-time job you have, so no time to... Yeah, man, like, that's it. Like, people... See, because my background is in film and television, so I've studied at university. I even had my own production company for a short period of time, and actually learned how to do proper studio... Like, not even studio. I've learned film and television level editing, right, and stuff like that. So when I tell you this, the reason I don't do it is because I know not only what a time sink it is, but how difficult that job is. So the fact that you are doing it, Goblets, you know, you definitely have my love and respect, and I do hope that it is going well for you because, like I said, it's a hard job. It's a hard and very thankless job. Like, I can tell you the name of every director in, like, major films, over the last decade. But if you ask like who the editor was, you would never know. Never know. Wearing heavy armor on a boat is probably a bad idea. Pajama party it is. Yeah, that's very true. You know what? I've had so many situations where I've had players wear plate mail on boats and river rafts and stuff like that. It is always a bad idea. I always tell this to them. Be like, yeah. Unless you're using that person as an anchor, yeah, just don't do it. I think I did add something, though. I added, like, coral armor. So I created coral armor, which was similar to plate. It wasn't as good as plate, but because it was aerated, it was much lighter, and it allowed water to pass through it, making it easier for you to move around. I think that was something. I want to say I read that in Stormrack from 3.5 D&D, and I think that's where I may have gotten that idea. Maybe. It is time consuming and I have no formal training. Yeah, even more, like the fact that you have to teach yourself, like especially that sort of stuff. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, I studied it for like, I want to say, I studied editing specifically for like 3 years, I want to say. And I likened it to trying to clean a glass window without looking what's on the other side. Like, I work by like listening to music and like chatting with people. Like, I'll answer emails while I'm prepping games, while I'm playing with Hero Forge and doing stuff, you know. I have to have that kind of chaos around me. But with editing, you can't do anything. You have to listen to what you're doing. You have to watch what you're doing. You have to timestamp what you're doing. It all has to be very focused. And yeah, that was always very difficult for me. I could do it, but it's not something I enjoy. It is not something I would do to... Not, even for my friends, I don't think I'd do it for free. Not because I don't love them, but because, like, I just... It's such a struggled skill for me. But yeah. Hey, Liska, welcome in. Drowning is terrifying in Pathfinder. Oh yeah, drowning is terrifying in most RPGs, right? The thing is suffocation is terrifying because, relatively speaking, if you calculate how hard it is to knock someone's hit points down versus how hard it is to make them suffocate, right? Suffocation's a time limit. Hit points is like a vitality measure, right? Like you can hit, like I've seen people take damage from like, you know, freaking fireballs and just sort of like... And you think about it, right? Like, that's a high-yield explosive. If a standard bonfire or a torch does 1d6 points of fire damage, and someone hits you with the equivalent of 10 torches, which is an open flame, that is a lot of explosive damage that people can just walk away from with nary a skin graft or a burn to have to be seen. And I understand that that's real-world physics versus fantasy physics, and we're not talking about that. But my point is that is a lot of damage that you can take, versus if you start suffocating, if you accidentally fall into the water and didn't inhale before you fell in Pathfinder at least, you could die in 2 rounds. That's a 12-second margin where you could die immediately, because you'd have no rounds to breathe, you fail your first fort save, you get to 0 hit points, you're underwater, unconscious, you fail your second fort save, and you're dead. So that's nuts. That's crazy. You know, that's how dangerous it is. Gilligan's Reed armor. Ooh, nice. I have to fine-tune, edit my animatics, syncing audio frames. My greatest fear is always this. So yeah, I'm gonna hate this at the end of this project. Oh man, yep. You gotta listen to it over and over again. I'm gonna figure out how to edit those cards, fanning the one out in the Malifaux automatic. Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, that's the thing. It's a skill that we learn and we polish and we practice. It's not one I'm good at. I mean, Mac, you've probably seen this. I am very picky. I'm very finicky. And so that comes from my training as a director. So when I look at something, I go, well, this is how this, you know, kind of looks and what it plays like. This is the story it's communicating. This is how I need it to breathe life into that motion. And to try and then turn the idea into something physical, that's magic. That is pure magic. I remember Dread's character death in Rob's Pathfinder game. That was quick. Yeah. Yeah, no, it was. Certainly are a wonderful critic. My stuff would be nowhere near as fine-tuned if I didn't show you. Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. I know I can be a little bit... And I tell this to everyone. If you ask me for my opinion on, like, stuff like art and animation, expect a very honest opinion. And if it's great, I will tell you it's great. If it's, if there's... I won't ever say something's bad. I'll always say like, hey, there's room for improvement in these areas, and I'll give constructive criticism. I'll never just say, oh, this is bad and it looks awful. Actually, no, that's a lie. I did that once. Someone sent me a Hero Forge mini, and they used a catfolk, but they had a hat on, so you couldn't see the cat ears, and they used human eyes, and because of that, it just looked like this human whose nose had been cut apart by a pair of pruning shears, and I was looking at it going this is making me uncomfortable. Because it was it's like somebody had mutilated your character's face. This doesn't look like a catfolk. And then I made a couple of changes, and I'm like, okay, look, we're taking off the hat. We're gonna put these. We're gonna use this. Why are we gonna use this? Because your artwork weirded me out. As an artist personally, I need that honest opinion. How am I supposed to get better if everyone just says it's good? Yeah, it's absolutely true. That sounds so cursed. Yeah, it did. It was so cursed. I don't want to show it because obviously I want to respect the person who did it. But yeah, it was very, very nuts. I like the villains in Blade 2. Who are the villains in Blade 2? It's so sad that I remember Blade 3 and not Blade 2. Blade 2 and 3 had the same villains. Yeah, it was the ones with the split down the middle, and they sort of went then made the Predator face. Yeah, those guys were pretty uncomfortable looking. I quite liked the second Blade movie. And fun fact, one of the characters who were in that little crew of vampires that were teaming up with Blade, the Asian dude with the samurai sword is actually Spike in the third X-Men movie. So the guy who actually has all the quills that come out of him and stuff like that, it's the same actor. There you go. Philanthropy gone wrong. Yeah, I've seen that actually. That's a good example. It looked like one of those people who goes through all the body mods to make themselves look like animals or cats or lizards and stuff. Not gonna lie though. I love lizards, and I've seen some body mods that people have done to get the ridge line of the lizard, and to get scaled and horns over the back of the head. Some of them look pretty good. If I didn't know better, I would say that person was a different species of anthropomorphic creature and looked really badass. Animorph looking ass. Did you know Animorphs was Australian? I didn't. I thought it was international. I thought everyone knew what Animorphs was, but apparently it's Australian. And, I didn't even realize that. And I knew Animorphs before I knew D&D, so I didn't realize that the Yeerk from Animorphs were just Mind Flayers. The little Mind Flayer Cerebromorph, into the ear, and that's what they did. And I always tell people this. There's always two passcodes I have for certain things that I will always allow because of reasons. If you ever come into my D&D games and there's a password on a door, if you cannot guess the password, one of the passwords is always the password that the Yeerks use, and the second is the international greeting. And I actually did that at the youth center recently with one of the kids. And it was nuts because the universal greeting is something that's from the early 90s. This is from the farthest stretches of my childhood memory, right? And these kids are 15, 16, years old. And I said, you come up to this locked door, the area's filling with poison gas. If you can tell me the universal greeting, the door will magically open. And this kid, without batting an eyelid, just, boom, throws it out there. I'm like, how do you even know that? And he couldn't tell me. He just says, I don't know. And I'm like, well, that makes sense. It's a universal greeting, but goddamn. I was very impressed. My kids impress me all the time. Very proud of them. Very proud of my young people. All the young people I play games with. Yep, paying attention now. Wait, it's Australian? The show had convinced me it was American. I watched the last part of the episode. Yeah, no, it was Australian. It was, hold on, maybe I'm lying. Hold on, let's take a quick moment. Alright, so the Animorphs show. Let's see. Yeah, so it was by Scholastics Publishing. It was broadcast. Oh no, it was made for Canada and the United States. The book. Oh no, Catherine Applegate was a US person. Yeah. Yeah, I thought it was Australian. Because why did I think it was Australian? Hold on, let me see if I can figure out why I thought it was Australian. Give me a second. I bet I'll figure it out. It was because book series, blah 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 blah. It was filmed in Canada. Broadcast. I don't know. There was something. Maybe it was one of the actors. Any Australian actors in it? There we go. Actors. I don't know. No, it's mostly Canadians. I don't know. Like I said, no clue why my head legitimately kept them out as a freaking thing. It's a Nickelodeon thing as well, so it wasn't even like produced by the same people. Oh well, there you go. Thought Matilda was American. I didn't realize Matilda was a Roald Dahl book. That was another thing. There you go. Alright. Let us continue our read, shall we? And then we'll take another break in a short time. Shh, it's Australian, another universe. Okay. Thank you, Myth. Alright, here we go. Chapter 8. The Hand of Fate. Now, for those of you who have just joined us in, our heroes have just landed on the beaches of hostile enemy territory. The bundle was sodden. The oilcloth had not been able to withstand its long soaking in the sea. "Rowan! Sheba's gift! How could I have forgotten?" exclaimed Alan, sitting down beside him. "Quickly, open it. It may be the only thing that'll help us now." "It is wet now," frowned Zeal. "Whatever is inside may be spoiled." Rowan fumbled with the plaited cord that tied the package. This time, the knots loosened easily. He pulled away the cord and slowly began to unwrap the oilcloth. He was afraid of what he might find inside. If the contents were ruined, he could not bear it. He had promised Sheba the black Booksha calf in return for this package, and on it he had pinned all his hopes. The cloth was folded and rolled over many, many times. Most of the thickness of the package was due to that. There was plainly much less inside than Rowan had believed. "Whatever she has given us, she has protected it well," said Alan doubtfully. "Almost too well for sense, one might think," Alan added Pelaine, his face remaining expressionless. "No worries, take it easy, kick the table. We'll see you later." His heart was beating fast. Rowan pulled away the last of the wrapped cloth, finally revealing what is inside. A piece of grimy metal. A small bundle of pale grass that grew outside of Sheba's hut, and a few twigs. He stared in disbelief. The disappointment was so bitter that it brought stinging tears to his eyes. "What is this?" hissed Zeal. Pelaine's face was stern. "What I feared. The witch was playing a trick to repay... Oh, sorry. What I had feared. The witch was playing a trick to repay me for warning Rowan not to trust her, and to repay him for listening to me. He told her he would not write down his promise until she had passed over the part of the bargain. She gave you some sticks from the fire basket, Rowan, with some grass and a piece of old iron added in for weight, muttered Alan. All nicely wrapped in cloth that it would disguise them. No wonder she insisted you didn't unwrap the package till you were far from home. Zeal gritted her teeth. No doubt she believed that we would not return, so she is safe. I'm so sorry, said Rowan in a low voice. Do not be, said Alan. Sheba must have planned to deceive you all along. The package was ready and waiting for her to pass to you, remember? This was not your fault, or Pelane's, or even mine for once. He looked down at his hands. Plainly, despite his light-hearted words, he was dismayed by what had happened. Zeal and Pelane, too, were silent, staring into the fire. Rowan knew the same thoughts were in their mind. One flint, one water bag, a piece of rope, a knife. No way to return home, and soon it would be dawn. Where would we go? What would we do? There's still the rhyme, he murmured. But what does it mean? Zeal demanded bitterly. It is impossible to understand. Not at all. Sheba simply failed to count us out properly. Alan joked. I've been thinking about it, and I'm certain that we are the fingers of fate's hand. Even though we're only 4, Zeal is the tall, straight middle finger, Pelane is the small, wiggly one at the end, I'm the ring finger, good for nothing but decoration, and Rowan is the strong little thumb. All of us behave as we should. Even Pelane smiled at this, but the smile quickly faded. Perhaps you are right, he said quietly. And perhaps then this is another one of Sheba's jokes, for the finger that is missing is the first finger, the pointer, the one which shows the way. And it is certain that this is the very one we need. Zeal moved restlessly, then pulled a piece of burning wood from the fire and stood up. Soon she was climbing the sand dunes behind them, using the wood as a torch. After a moment, Alan joined her. They were quickly swallowed by the darkness, but Rowan saw the flickering light climb to the top of the dunes and move around. As Zeal turned in all directions to peer at the land beyond, Do not go out of sight, Pelane called. Do not leave the shore. Pelane, said Rowan in a low voice, what is this place? Why are you afraid of it? Tell me. Pelane shifted uncomfortably. I think we are at the edge of what I hear called the Wastelands, he said at last. About it I know nothing, except that it is said to be a vast and barren land. It is Zebak territory, but even Zebak do not venture into the Wastelands. It is a forbidden place. Why? Rowan asked. Pelane turned his head. I do not know, he mumbled. He looked up and saw Zeal and Ellen returning. Their torches had burnt down to a dull glow. Say nothing to them, Rowan. Not yet. Perhaps I am wrong about where we are, and I hope I am. Zeal and Alan flung themselves down at the front of the fire again. There is a glow, a very faint and far-away one. Maybe on the horizon, Zeal reported, throwing her smoldering torch back into the fire. We could hear some shrieks and scratching noises, but that was about it. The blackness is almost complete. Even the trees do not show against the sky. I had hoped to launch the kite and mark our course, but we'll have to wait till dawn. As you say, murmured Pelane. Sunrise would be best. Sunrise will be the test. There was an uncomfortable silence. broken only by the sound of the waves breaking on the sand and the crackling of the fire. Rowan tossed one of the sticks from the unwrapped package into the flame, but it was still too wet to burn. It steamed sulkily, and he stared at it, shaking his head. Sheba's gift, on which he had so foolishly depended, wasn't even useful for burning. How could he have been taken in by her tricks? How could he have trusted her? Well, because she has always in the end proven worthy of trust. This thought drifted into his mind and clung there. He looked at the piece of metal still lying with the 4 remaining twigs on the oil lamp in his lap. He picked up and held it to the light. It was not just a piece of scrap metal, or part of the old fire grate as he had first thought. It was dirty and dull, and heavy. It was a medallion of some sort. Hope flickered in his heart. He rubbed at the medallion with his shirt, and dirt and soot came off it from the dull surface, and he could see it was decorated, and that a small metal loop was fixed into one end. It was meant to be worn on a chain around the neck, no doubt. It could be that this is more useful than it appears, he said, hesitantly holding it up so the others could see. Alan held out his hand, and Rowan gave him the medallion to him, but he did so reluctantly. Suddenly he became aware that he did not want to let it go. He watched jealously as it was passed around. "Perhaps a charm," said Zeal. "Perhaps it will bring us good fortune?" She passed it to Pelaine, and went back to staring into the fire, her brow furrowed in thought. "It has not been particularly lucky for us up until now," said Pelaine, handing the medallion back to Rowan. "But we shall see." Rowan held the smooth piece of metal tightly for a moment, weighing it in his hand. Was it something or nothing? He couldn't tell, but Sheba said the package was precious, and the medallion was the only possibly precious thing in it. On a sudden impulse, he picked up the plaited silver cord which she had fastened the package and threaded it through the metal loop. Working quickly, he tied the ends of the cord and slipped it around his neck, so the medallion hung low on his chest, hidden by his shirt. When this had been done, he felt strangely relieved. Now that the medallion was safe, protected, and hidden from sight once more, it was as though a great weight had been taken off his mind. But why, he asked himself. Even if it is some magic charm, why keep it a secret? And if it's just some ornament with no meaning, he smiled at himself. No. Rowan. At first, he did not recognize the voice as Zeal's. It was so low that it choked. He looked up, startled. Zeal was moving back from the fire, pointing into the flame, her eyes wide and frightened. Rowan looked into the blaze. The damp stick he had thrown there had dried out and finally caught alight. Green flames were dancing along its length. The whole fire was now alive with green light, darting here and there, mixing with the orange and reds. He stared, fascinated. He heard the exclamation of Alan and Pelaine as they too saw what was happening, but could not look away. There was a shape glowing in the mist of the flame, a face with red eyes staring at him. And there was a voice. It hissed in his brain like a fire itself, and his right hand began to throb with pain as words came to him. The light that gleams at their back door will guide you from the lonely shore, but danger seeks you as you go, one from above, one from below. One hides by night, one hides by day, and hard and stony is your way. The voice faded, and the face disappeared. The green light began to die away. Rowan blinked and took in a deep breath. When he looked again, the fire was glowing red and orange. The stick was just a thin tube of fine white ash that crumbled as he watched. He looked up and met the startled eyes of Pelaine, Zeal, and Alan. What devilry is this? Whispered Zeal. It seems, Rowan said, trying to keep his voice steady, that we have found the 5th member of our party. The pointing finger. The one is to show us the way. Is Sheba herself. Ooh. I kind of... So, end of chapter 8, by the way. I kind of suspected that when, partway through this chapter, when they were, going through and they were talking about, the pinky and the ring finger and yada, yada, yada. As soon as it came up to the pointer finger, I was like... Yeah, that makes sense. It makes sense that Sheba is maybe the 5th, and then she's pointing the way for them. That makes sense. I like that. But does that mean 5 do not return because 5 technically didn't leave, so only 4 are returning? I mean, maybe. Maybe that's the way that that's supposed to be read. Interesting. Interesting. I don't know. Don't know how I feel about that. I think the next step is going to be a large desert where they're going to have to travel on stones and stones, because there's going to be if you ever watch the movie Tremors, I reckon there's going to be one of those things, one of the giant, what are the tremor creatures called? I don't even remember. But yeah, little kind of yum things. And I reckon there's going to be more of those bird lizard things as well. Which book is this numerically? Book 4 out of 5. So I reckon by day, the birds are going to see them and swoop down and mess them up. And then by night, the sandworms are going to detect them through the ground. So they're going to have to move during the night on the rocks. That's my guess. That is the puzzle. I think. It could be wrong. Maybe. We'll see. We shall find out. Dune? Yeah, Dune. Dune, Tremors, Beetlejuice. I mean, take your pick, right? Sorry, I am yawning. We have another drink here. Delicioso. Water is very refreshing. Okay. Let us continue, shall we? So. Chapter 9. The Wasteland. Well, Helene was right. You're at the Wastelands. One day, that'll be the case, where they turn around, they're like, gee, I really hope we're not at the Wastelands. And then you're not at the Wastelands. It's like, oh, good, phew. Glad we weren't there. Be funny. Ooh, all right. Chapter 9. The Wasteland. I don't know why I'm so tired today. I think it's because I haven't got a good sleep. I don't even know why I'm tired. Why am I yawning? All right. The Wasteland. Oh, I think it's the lights. That's what it is. It's my photosensitivity kicking in. Okay. Yeah, I might have to end the stream after this chapter, unfortunately. For those of you who don't know, I suffer from photosensitivity, which actually triggers migraines, lethargy, and teary eyes and stuff like that when I'm under too many under bright lights. So yes, I think maybe having 10 to 15 games during the school holidays has started to take its toll. So maybe I'll have to end this after this chapter. We'll see where I'm at. All right, I'll finish this chapter. I'll do this chapter though. So, the Wastelands. After Rowan had repeated the words that had come to him from the fire, the 4 companions sat for a moment in silence. This rhyme is clearer than the other, said Alan at last, but I cannot say it's more pleasing. Zeal frowned. The light we had to follow must be that glow we saw on the horizon. A light from the Zebak city, no doubt, for the rhyme speaks of their back door. But the glow will not be visible to guide us by day. Then we should move on without losing further time, Alan suggested eagerly. He jumped to his feet, but Pelaine and Zeal both shook their head. We cannot risk further disaster by plunging into the unknown with no supplies and no knowledge of what's ahead, Zeal said firmly. There could be cliffs, deep holes, even water in which we could stumble. It's only a few hours to dawn. We should wait till then. It will help no one if we are all to perish because we are unprepared, agreed Pelaine. The rhyme says clearly that our way from here is to be hard. It also says that we are to face dangers both day and night, and they are to come from all around us, including the sky. The creature, what carried Anad away, attacked by day, Alan said, and it came from the sky. It dropped like a thunderbolt. If there are more, if they patrol this place. Their voices seemed distant and echoed to Rowan. He still felt stunned at what he had seen in the fire, and Sheba's words had filled him with foreboding, but an overwhelming tiredness had settled over him like a heavy mist. It was pressing him down into sleep. Struggling against it, he wrapped the remaining 4 sticks in the oilcloth and put the package away inside his shirt. But he yawned, and as he did so, his eyes kept closing. Pelaine stood up. Soon the sky will lighten, he said. I cannot soak because of the serpents, but I will lie on the wet sand for a time. He stalked away towards the sea. Alan stared after him, frowning. Something's wrong, Pelaine. Something is worrying Pelaine, he murmured. It would be strange if that were not so, exclaimed Zeal. We have much to think about. Well, if we are to stay here till dawn, I, for one, am going to think with my eyes closed, like Rowan, said Alan. You sleep, answered Zeal. I will keep watch. And then Rowan heard no more. It was a bright day, and already very warm when Rowan awoke. He opened his eyes with a guilty start and sat up so quickly that his head swam. He was alone by the cold ashes of a fire. There was the sound of the waves breaking on the shore. The sky was a perfect blue bowl above his head, and he heard voices and looked around. Pelaine, Alan, and Zeal were walking up from the sea. All of them were wet, and all of them carrying dripping objects in their hands. Some of our supplies were washed ashore during the night, Alan called as they grew nearer. We collected what we could. Pelaine then reached out to Rowan. Do you feel refreshed? He asked, bending to place a fish-skin bag and sodden blanket onto the sand. Rowan nodded, deeply ashamed that he had slept so long. Slept for even an hour while Anad was in such peril. He was ashamed, too, that he had slept while the others worked, and ashamed that he had let them do it out of their kindness. And ashamed that they let him do it out of kindness. How tired am I of always being a burden, he thought suddenly. Let me try that again. I can do that better. How tired am I of always being a burden, he thought suddenly. Others of my age in Rin are strong and can face any task. Why was I born such a weakling? He turned away from Pelaine, fighting down the pain he felt. Sheba was right. He was an oddity. A stranger in the herd like the black Buksha calf. He was prized by his people now for what he had done, but he would never be prized for what he was. His qualities were not those valued in Rin. He knew that there had been other shy and gentle children born in the village over the past 300 years. He had heard tales of them, which only show how rare they were. Many had been keepers of the Buksha before him, because the great beasts were easy to manage. Most never married or had children of their own. They had spent their lives very much alone, with only the animals for company. Oddities. Never really understood or accepted. Are you unwell, my friend? Rowan looked up and found Pelaine was gazing at him in concern. He shook his head and smiled, just as Alan and Zeal reached them. 2 packets of dried fish, announced Alan, as he and Zeal threw their wet burdens down beside Pelaine's. Another wet bag. Some sort of speckled biscuit that seems to be so hard that even the sea hasn't melted it. Or is it maybe a piece of cork? It is a seaweed cake, Pelaine answered calmly. My people use it on long voyages. It is nourishing and light to carry. It is fortunate you found it. It will be useful in the wastelands. With a sinking heart, Rowan realized that Pelaine, Alan, and Zeal had already investigated the land beyond the shore. That was why they seemed so jokingly and full of energy. They were keeping up their spirits and taking their mind off what was before them. You were right then, he said to Pelaine in a low voice. Pelaine nodded, avoiding his eyes. Rowan saw Zeal and Alan glance at one another. There was something they were not telling him. He stood up unsteadily, and without turning back, trudged up the hill of sand to the place where Zeal and Alan stood the night before. Then at last the land beyond the dunes lay spread out before him, and dread filled his heart. The sun glared down on a vast plain that stretched out on all sides as far as the eye could see. Rowan remembered Zeal complaining in the night that it was so dark she could not even see the trees outlined against the sky. It was no wonder, for there were no trees at all. No bushes, no shade, no shelter anywhere, just mats of tiny plants that clung to the baked earth here, and they were Just mats of tiny plants that clung to the baked earth here and there, making patches of pink, gold, and dull green. Between the plant mats, there was smooth, bone-dry clay scattered with lumps of mottled rock. The plains shimmered with waves of heat that rose from its dried-up surface like a hot breath, and something flashed on the horizon, a blinding glare as though another sun burned there. Rowan looked up, squinting. Not the tiniest speck marred the clear, hot blue of the sky. There was no fearsome creature circling for prey, just a ball of white heat beating down on the shrinking land, heating it as a flame heats an oven. So straight up, we are already in Australia. That's basically what we're at. There's no shade. It is a cloudless day, and it has baked the earth. And you know what? Actually, where I am in Perth, there's actually a lot of clay and iron in the soil. So I know exactly what he is looking at. I've got such a vivid picture because, like, if you travel, like, I want to say 10, 15 minutes from my house, you'll see this exact landscape. Yeah, you'll see this exact landscape. It's nuts. Hey, Warco, welcome in. We're doing some reading, Rowan and the Zebak. Long story short, to catch you up, they have traveled across the sea to a hostile land with people who once enslaved our main protagonist, Rowan, his people. His sister has been kidnapped by a giant flying lizard creature, and they're trying to get her back. In Rowan's company is Alan the Baker, a jovial, kind of like kind-spirited man who lives in Rin. Zeal, a Zebak, who are the bad guys. She's not a Zebak. She was born a Zebak, but raised by a group known as the Travelers, who think of them like kind of friendly storytellers who travel around in wagons. She's one of their forerunners who fly kites around and is really good at scouting, even though she is still quite stern. And lastly, Pelaine of the Maris. Pelaine is kind of like an aquatic humanoid with webbed hands. He finds emotions very difficult. He's very prudent, very cunning. And the 4 of these people are about to try and cross a desert in order to try and listen to the words of an evil witch. Oh, I say evil witch. A witch. Who has given them direction to try and save Rowan's sister. So there you go. All right. Danger seeks you as you go, one from above and one from below. Rowan felt a hand on his shoulder. Alun was standing beside him, staring at him gravely. Rowan swallowed. The danger of the rhyme. The danger that threatens by day and hides by night. It's the sun, he said. Alan nodded briefly. So it would seem. Is why we didn't wake you. We realized it as soon as we saw the accursed plain that we could not cross it by day. The delay is unfortunate, but our only chance of surviving is to travel by night. If we begin at sunset and do not spare ourselves, we may reach the city before sun rises again. The danger of the night? Rowan began. Whatever danger the darkness holds for us, Alan interrupted, it can be no worse than being baked alive. He pressed his lips together. As would be, he pressed his lips together. As will be happening right at this moment in the midst of the plain, if I had my way. Pelaine would be dried and dead, and we would be about to join him. When will I learn my senses? Let me try that again. Okay, I got the line. I'm trying to get the words in. It's quite a interesting and broken up line, but let's try it. Whatever danger the darkness holds for us, Alan interrupted, it can be no worse than being baked alive. He pressed his lips together. As would be happening right at this moment in the midst of the plains, had I had my way. Pelaine would be dried and dead, and we would be about to join him. When will I learn my sense? He turned and stumbled back down the dunes, and Rowan followed, shaken by the bitterness in his words. Alan pretended so well to be an uncaring joker that sometimes it was hard to remember that he wasn't nearly as confident as he often appeared. Oh, so that was supposed to be really confident. Okay, let me try that a third time. All right, I got this. Come on, guys, we got this. Whatever the darkness holds for us, Alan interrupted, it can be no worse than being baked alive. He pressed his lips together, as would be happening right at this moment in the midst of the plain if I had my way. Pelaine would be dried and dead, and we'd be about to join him. When will I learn my sense? There we go. Yeah, that's better. Nice. While they had been gone, Pelaine and Zeal had made a tent, using long sticks and the wet blankets from Zeal's kite. They were sitting, huddled underneath, sheltering from the sun and talking in low voices. Alan and Rowan crawled under the shelter with them. Pelaine took his knife from his belt and carefully cut out 4 small equal slices from the hard brown seaweed cake. He gave each slice to them and took the last one for himself. Rowan chewed the tough food gratefully. It seemed a long time since he had eaten, and though the cake was seaweed and tasted very strong, he didn't find it too unpleasing. Zeal sniffed her portion suspiciously, then began to nibble it without appetite. Alan looked at his with pretend disdain. As a baker of some renown, I must protest that you call this cake, Pelaine, he said. If I are to live on this, then we will have to turn it into very thin fish before the week's out. What? If we are to live on this, we will have to turn into very thin fish before the week is out. There we go. Better to be a live thin fish than dead of hunger, Pelaine remarked unconcerned. But, as you wish. He finished his own fish cake with relish, licking the last crumbs from his fingers, then took a drink from his water bag. And a little water to follow, he said. But the little only. Supplies are short. Alan nodded gloomily and began to eat, wrinkling his nose as he did so. Pelaine smiled slightly and crawled out from under the shelter. While you are resting here, I will soak, he announced, peering back at them. Then I will be ready, and when the sun begins to set. Then I will be ready when the sun begins to set. Sleep well. Rowan waited until Zeal and Alan had settled themselves to rest, then crept out of the tent. He found the Maris man standing at the edge of the water, looking out at the glittering sea. Pelaine? You cannot come with us to the wastelands, he said abruptly. What if we are still traveling when the morning comes? There is no shade. There will be little water to drink or to wet your skin. You will die, Pelaine. I am in danger whether I stay or go, answered Pelaine. There is no fresh water on the shore, and if I try to escape by swimming, the night and the serpents will come for me before I reach land. I have considered this well, and I have decided that if I am to die, I prefer to do it with my friends than do it alone. A fishman out of water I began, and so I will end. Rowan tried to speak, but his voice and throat were tight. He could not. Pelaine's thin lips curved into a smile. I do not regret joining you, Rowan, he murmured. Without me, you certainly would have perished in the sea long before we were in sight of land. So I have played my part, as Alan and Zeal and yourself will no doubt play yours before this quest is done. He walked into the water and lay down in the shallows. But I will not die before my time, he said, closing his eyes. Now go, and rest, Rowan. You must gather all of your strength, for who knows what this evening will bring. End of chapter 9. Gaze in the trench coat, welcome in. How are you doing? Thank you so much for the follow. Okay, that was a really touching scene. I like that. I enjoy the Maris and the idea of these like amphibious humans, and the fact that Rowan's made friends with Pelaine, who I think in the third book when he was in, Pelaine wasn't really a major part of it. He wasn't one of the candidates that like went with Rowan to the island and tried to find the cure for his mom. You know, Rowan met Pelaine because Pelaine had delivered the message that the Keeper was sick and that they needed to go to the Maris people to pick a new chooser. And so that journey, that very short journey to Maris, as well as kind of that, you know, like that for me was like, that's a really cool piece where you get to now see that friendship. One of the characters who doesn't emote, who, like, because the Maris people, they don't share emotions. You know, as bad as it sounds, they are supposed to be very conniving, very manipulative. They lie, they steal, they even murder, you know, each other. And if it wasn't for the power of the Keeper of the Crystal, they would turn on each other in a heartbeat. So having someone who is so good at concealing themselves, not opening up to friendships, to see that kind of bond where Rowan truly cares about him and doesn't want him to risk dying. And you got to think of that kind of death too, right? Like going across the desert, if you're an amphibious person, and then, you know, having the sun cook you alive. I mean, even if you weren't an aquatic creature, that is brutal. That is so brutal. But there's still the danger by night. The thing from below. What that means is still up to anyone's guess. But yeah, no, that was a really good chapter. Actually, you know what? I will say this. I'll say this right now. That was probably my favorite chapter in the series so far. You know, that whole piece. I also love the fact that he just like lay down in the surf, you know, like, and just closed his eyes, like just getting ready for everything, you know, enjoying the moment, the calm before their great task before them. You know, it was so good, so peaceful. And, you know, like as he says, Rowan could not have done this alone, and he can't do it alone. But now we've got to watch as like everyone does their own thing, you know. Like, you get to, we're going to see what happens when Zeal has to do something. And then we're going to see something when Alan gets to do something. And I'm so curious to what Alan's going to get up to. Because he's a baker, right? He tells stories. He's, you know, he wasn't, like, even when you think about, like, the first book where we met Alan trying to climb the mountain, he couldn't go on because he couldn't swim, right? So you got to think about it in that perspective. Like, Alan's not like the strongest person in Rin. So what part does he have to play in the recovery of Rowan's sister? Only time will tell. Only time will tell. And I am very eager to find out what the future will hold. Now, Gaze in a trench coat. If you don't know who I am, my name is Mike. I'm the Devil's Gamer. I do TTRPGs here, and on Sundays we do Dag Reads, where I read books, and that is something that is slowly making its way into my usual repartee, as it were, coming into every Sunday. But if you want to check me out, I do a ton of TTRPG stuff throughout the whole week. A lot of Pathfinder. In fact, I don't think I'm doing any D&D. I don't think I'm doing any D&D recently. No, I've got... Oh, yeah, that's right. I've got a special event coming up next week. Special event next week. We have Dragon Kitchen coming up next week. So for those of you who don't know what Dragon Kitchen is my D&D 5e cooking competition where two celebrity guests are going to be facing each other head-to-head in a fantasy kitchen, cooking and preparing a special ingredient and making some really cool food out of it. If you haven't checked it out, go check out my YouTube channel at Dead Aussie Gamer Live, and go check out some of the other ones. But yeah, it's a fun little thing that we do, and it's sponsored by Hero Forge, and we get to go see all the cool stuff that comes with that. But yeah, this one we have Brandon from Dungeon Master Therapy / Game Master Therapy, and we have Cole, aka Lightbox Gnome. So yes, we've got all that coming next week. I don't have any promotions yet because these two knuckleheads haven't given me their characters yet, so we'll be pounding them for it this week. So there'll be announcements and there'll be stuff. But yeah, we're gonna be doing Dragon Kitchen once a month. So this month has been somewhat sorted out, so huzzah. What am I on next? Next I will be on in I'll be on in like what, 10:30, 11:30, 11, 12, 1, 2, 3, 9 hours, 9.5 hours. I will be on in 9.5 hours for Pathfinder 2nd Edition. We are going to be playing Curse of the Crimson Throne as our heroes journey through the sewers in search of a missing person. The boyfriend of one of our characters' daughters has disappeared on the docks, and they are going to uncover and find out what had happened to them. Dun, 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 dun. Hey, Melf's Acid Arrow, thank you so much for joining us. We're actually just wrapping up, but thank you for swinging by. Yes, this is, of course, Emily Rodda, who is also the author of Deltora's Quest, which is a wonderful book series. I think Rowan of Rin, honestly, this was my Harry Potter, right? Like this was my first introduction to fantasy adventures and stuff like that, which is why we're reading it. But welcome in. Also, I love the name. I have had the actual pleasure of meeting Melf, should I say, the actual player who played Melf. For those of you who don't know who that is none other than the infamous and industrious Luke Gygax, who I met at GaryCon a couple of times now. Who I'm still trying to get to play games with us, but he's such a busy man, that one. But yeah, that is who it is. But yes, I'm very, very happy to have you here. Okay, who is streaming? Who is streaming? Luke Gygax is a super chill dude, but yeah, full dance card. Yeah, absolutely. No, I'm a big fan. I mean, here's the thing. I don't roleplay with people because they're famous. I roleplay with people who want and love roleplaying in their very souls, you know? Like, I love people who are just so passionate. Oh, that's me. Hello. I don't need to... Sly flourishes on Sly does not accept raids. It looks like no one... is on doing stuff. Oh, hold on, here we go. Siam. What are you doing? Yeah, okay, here we go. We got a group. SEUM. We're gonna go raid these dudes who are doing some Dungeons and Dragons. And they're doing a subathon. So we're gonna go send some love and go hang out with some good role-playing. But yes, if you've just followed us, guys, my name's Michael. I'm the Dead Aussie Gamer. This is my place, this is my face. And if you like good role-playing games and like hanging out and doing cool things, supporting TTRPGs in the mental health area, then stick around, come watch all my stuff. We will be back, like I said, in about 9.5 hours, so stay tuned for that. Be wonderful, be safe, be amazing, because I know you are. And until we meet again, as always, from me to you, game hard or die trying. Good night, folks.